to the Pavement Group podcast. We're here for episode 7. We have a special guest. Jacob Noble from Anchor Health Properties is joining us. Brian Hess is here as always with me as well. We're going to have a lot of fun. Thanks for tuning in to episode 7 of the Pavement Group podcast. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Pavement Group podcast. Again, this is episode 7. We're having a lot of fun with this, so thank you for joining us. Feedback's been great. We've been getting a bunch of different questions and that sort of thing back from our audience, and we figured it was time that we get this thing dialed in a little bit. Let's bring in a guest, So we are really thrilled to welcome an old friend and someone that I've known from the property management industry, commercial real estate world for many years, Jacob Noble. Jacob, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. Thanks for having me. And thanks to you, Brian, as well, for inviting me on this podcast. First off, that production is unbelievable. I don't think I can ever do a podcast again now.
Well, it's funny you say that. So, I was talking to Brian about who made sense for our first guest. And I'm like, I got a friend that's pretty darn good at this podcasting thing. Let's not start with a rookie, right? Let's just get right in, jump in with both feet, and had Jacob on. So you used to podcast, or not that you used to, you did. You said you hadn't been doing as much since the virus has started, but you've got a lot of experience with this.
Of course, yeah. No, I started podcasting in my MBA media days, so that's when I first got into it. And then it was during actually the lockout year in the MBA that my buddy and we decided just to drink beers on the podcast instead of talk about basketball, and that ended up being a lot more fun. And as you know me from, is we ended up turning that into a podcast about craft beer and comedy.
Right.
So that's how we transitioned into it. So we've been podcasting 6-7 years. I lost track of how long we've been doing it, but I moved recently, and that kind of put a little stop to it because not as close to my co-host as I used to be. And then obviously COVID hit, and that just kind of changed the landscaping of meeting people in person.
Sure. Yeah. That makes some sense. It's called Beers and Laughs. I've listened to a bunch of the episodes, and it's great. And Jacob and I also have the similar hobby of stand-up comedy. We more so enjoy watching it, but we've both tried it a little bit in the past. And I think that's pretty cool as well. Well, thank you for joining us. Brian Hess from the Pavement Group is here as always as well.
Yeah.
How are you, Brian?
Appreciate you being here, Jacob. And I told Todd we definitely got to get somebody on here who knows what they're doing, since we clearly don't.
Right.
So thank you for being here, man. I look forward to this conversation. It should be fun.
We just sort of fumble our way through things. So you're with Anchor Health Properties. Would you tell us just a little bit about that company, what you do for them, and what Anchor's all about?
Absolutely. Anchor Health Properties is a unique company in that they kind of target medical office buildings specifically, or any opportunity to convert a building to medical office. So that's kind of their niche as their target. The two head honchos of the company have been in the healthcare industry, whether it's been real estate or finance, for many years, and kind of partnered up and formed Anchor Health in 2016. Really got our first account there. And since I've been with the company in the year and a few months, they've hired at least 7 to 10 new property management around the country. And I think we just had a chart the other day showing in the past 2 years, we're number 2 in asset acquisition in the medical office world. So that's kind of what we do. That's kind of what we focus on. And, it's one of those sayings, you know what you're good at and stick to it.
Yeah. Sure. Right on. So are the actual physical buildings, are they like doctor's offices? Are they more of like a hospital setting?
So yes, it's a wide mix. It's mostly outpatient services.
Okay.
But the unique thing about the medical world is it's all about what the doctors can charge. And this is what I learned through, is, as you know, Todd, I'm new to the medical world. I've only been in the medical world since I've worked with Anchor. Prior to that, I was with CBRE and Transwestern and Shorenstein and a couple other stops along the way. Climbing the ladder in this property management career.
Yep.
But yeah, no, typically they're outpatient services. But the thing I learned mostly is you want to be close to what they call a campus. So if you're within a certain demographic, and I think it's 200 yards, don't quote me on that, but it's a certain distance from a hospital, you can charge hospital rates. So that's what these medical offices covet, and that's kind of the assets we try acquiring. And we partner up with these medical providers, and we also have a major development wing that has been growing year after year since I've been with Anchor. So we basically try to partner up with these healthcare providers and give them the real estate needs that
Cool.
that they're looking for, whether it's a new building, whether it's an acquisition, whether it's converting space, and that's what we try to do.
That's pretty cool. Brian, it's funny. We had that conversation recently. You were talking about somebody out. Brian's in Pittsburgh, out by you. That's one of the largest landowners in the Pittsburgh metro area. Who was that? That was a medical.
University of Pittsburgh Medical Center.
That's what it was. Yeah, UPMC. Okay.
Massive landowner. And it's funny you say that, man, because I've always wondered, why there were so many medical office buildings next to or very close to hospital centers. And then as they build these hospitals, there's always, medical buildings going up or being converted in that general vicinity, which is pretty cool. Like, you start to put these things together. And the other thing that kind of stood out to me is, through education of following people online, being connected on LinkedIn, you really figure out how the property owner, manager, even leasing pieces of the opposite side of, who we serve as a company works. And it's, you start to build these portfolios of people who need space. And then you go out and acquire that space, and then you put these tenants into that space. So it's a really cool business model. And then, as you get the contractors, the vendors, the property management people that can service all of that stuff, and they get really used to it, it becomes a really smooth running business that helps solve a lot of problems.
Right. So, Jacob, when you were at Transwestern, which CBRE acquired, if I remember correctly, right? That was more commercial office type of stuff.
Correct. That was a unique portfolio. There I had industrial buildings, and I had regular office space, and as well as some minimal retail. Okay.
So what's the biggest difference when you go from that type of real estate into the healthcare world?
There's two things. I think it's how the leases are written. Typically in medical office, you strive for triple net.
Okay. Is that because there's so many like build outs and that sort of thing? Everything's unique?
No, and I'll explain that in a second. So typically, because office space, they do base year leases, you're more hands-on there. So, when light bulbs go out, when, small faucet leaks, the day-to-day things that go wrong inside of a building, in office spaces, you're typically on call to service those problems. Yeah. When you're dealing with medical offices, if they're triple net, they typically take care of the issues internally, especially if they're with a healthcare provider. They have their own systems and teams that handle the internal spaces. So we're only responsible for the building envelope aspect of the asset when it comes to any issues of the building. So typically we'll still be called for plumbing or electrical issues, unless it's just lighting. So that's really the difference is your day-to-day on-call for issues and problems. In terms of, the role of property management, you're still collecting the rents, you're still paying your invoices, you're still coordinating the work, and you're still doing your monthly reports, your annual budgets, and so forth. So the administrative side of your job never really changes. It's just, your day-to-day, what you're really responsible of.
Yeah. I gotcha. Awesome, man. So how is working? I know you're a very hands-on kind of a person. And property facilities, they really blend a lot of times in that role. How has working remote changed that for you, or has it presented any unique challenges?
It's been tough, but at the same time, we're still able to travel because we have to go to the building. We have to go. Unfortunately, government mandates aren't going to stop us if our building's on fire. So, we're still traveling, as well as, going back to your question between office and medical. Typically in an office, as you first met me when I was working downtown Boston, I basically sat and managed one building. Whereas now I have a portfolio. So how can I be in 4 places anyways? So, I've learned to adapt to become remotely, even when I first joined this company, because I had 3 assets in 3 different parts of Massachusetts. And now I have one in Minnesota. So, I manage one that's out in Minnesota, and I have the portfolio here as well. So it's learned to adapt, but I think it's been harder because now, as you said, when you're coordinating projects, being hands-on, you're not able to learn as much because I'm not able to walk the property with you. So to give you an example, I just wrapped up some road repairs actually to stay on point and some crack sealing. That was you put it out to bid. Vendors came by. They looked at it in their own time. If they had questions, they emailed me. It wasn't the typical, let's all meet on Tuesday at 9 o'clock in the parking lot and let's walk.
Gotcha. Yeah, sure. How'd the project go?
Project went well.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
Good. Awesome, man. Yeah, and traveling's different. We were actually just in Minnesota as well. We were in Minneapolis for a quick meeting.
I was there
And
weeks ago.
yeah, so you're out there a few times a year. Is that how it works?
So yeah, I'm supposed to go out there every few months.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, it's everybody sort of asks because most people aren't traveling right now. Geez, what's it like? And the first time was a little weird, but it's pretty nice right now, isn't it? Nobody's on the plane. The airports are empty.
Well, the thing that bummed me out was I got to Logan around lunchtime, and nothing was open.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
all I had was Dunkin' Donuts or Be Good. So I was like, went to Be Good, grabbed the burger, and called it a day.
Right, yeah.
You know,
Yeah, you really have to.
Yeah, and you arrive
plan.
early, and you're sitting there, and you're like, oh, well, I have an hour and a half before I need to be there. You know, and then but it was eerie walking through TSA pre-check with 6 TSA people there, just me showing up, and I'm like, do I need to take laptop out or anything? Just go, just walk through.
Right.
I was just saying to someone last week, though, I flew through Baltimore to Charlotte, and then I've done a decent amount of flying here in the last handful of weeks, and it was surprising to me how many people were in the hubs, right, in Baltimore, in Charlotte, even in Denver the other day. I mean, it's certainly not back to normal, but it's getting there. You know, you can start to see people, kind of getting back to a normal pace and not being as afraid as they have been in previous months.
Right.
Yeah. I'm hoping this doesn't change for a while. I really like traveling like this.
That middle seat
like flying private.
So bad, huh?
Well, just picture. I was gonna say, just picture 2021 vacations are gonna be nightmares. They're gonna overbook planes and overbook hotels. And
yeah, you're right.
It's gonna be a nightmare.
Playing a little bit of catch up. So where else is Anchor located? Where else do you guys have locations?
The best thing I would say is go to their website and look at the bottom. They have all the cities that we're major hubs in. And unfortunately, Boston is not even listed under there. So that's something I'm trying to talk to them about. I guess we got to get more buildings up here before we're considered a hub. But we have 3 main branches, essentially, 3 main offices. Media, Pennsylvania is kind of our East Coast office. We have 3 different offices in Tennessee, in Nashville and Chattanooga. And then we also have our major offices in Charlottesville. That's where kind of our corporate headquarters is Charlottesville, Virginia. And then we have a big presence out in San Diego. But there are managers in Washington State, Oregon, Denver, down to Alabama, Atlanta, Florida. So we're all over the country and spread across, as I manage the building in Minnesota.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. Well, you got to get them on the map here in Boston for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny. So, I guess we'll get there. I guess I can help you segue. Don't mean to just take over your podcast, but
please, listen, we're here for an education as much as we are for the podcast.
I was going to say, speaking of Bulma, we're at Bulma functions and everyone does that like head tilt and they come down to your name tag and like Anchor Health Properties. What is that? So being in the Boston region, I got that a lot. So that's kind of a small goal of mine is let's get some more assets up here and let's put Anchor on the map in the Northeast.
That's awesome. Well, great segue. Actually, I've got my Bulma golf tournament Yeti from last year. I have my coffee out of every morning. So you're pretty involved with Bulma Boston.
I am.
I wanted to talk. I know you were a membership chair, I believe, for a few years, or maybe you still are.
Last year they rotate every year. So last year I was the chairman. Now I'm just back into the committee.
Okay, but you got very involved. So you saw a lot of value there. Would you walk me through that a little bit? I know as a vendor, why, being a paving guy, why we joined Bulma, we try to network and get to meet people and obviously referral sources and all that sort of stuff. So as a property manager, what's the upside to a Bulma type organization?
I would say, and that's a great question, Todd, because obviously the vendors aspect of it, you can automatically see why. You're there to get new business. You're there to meet the managers and network, as you said, and, maybe meet people who don't do what you do for a living, but, they need that partnership of that contractor to do a project together in some sort. So you get that relationship. But as a manager, it really helps your career. That's first and foremost. I'm lucky where I'm at a company where I don't ever envision leaving unless they sell all the assets in Massachusetts, then I'll move and wherever they stick me. But in the third party management world, it really is a lot of turnover, unfortunately. Buildings buy and sell, and sometimes it's owner managed, sometimes it's third party. If you're in a third party and it's owner managed, you might not stay with the building. So things happen all the time. It's fast pacing. Buildings come and go. So, you really got to look out for yourself, unfortunately. Sure. And where Bulma comes into play is you network. So you'll meet, other property managers, and you might be an assistant, and they're looking for a new assistant, or they're looking for a new manager. You've seen it. You've been in the industry for a while. Companies grow, companies shrink. And the best part about Boston, specifically Boston, is there are so many new buildings. With new buildings comes new managers. Yeah. So it's especially right now, and I'm seeing a shortage. There's a real shortage of property managers. Unfortunately, I think COVID's going to change that a little bit. If you really want to get that deep into that conversation, but you might not need as much management due to the vacancy of buildings with the change.
Just the changing landscape.
Yeah. So no one knows but prior to COVID, with all the buildings coming up, looking for good managers is hard because people come in this industry and they don't want to do it. They move on. But Bulma is a real good tool because it keeps you connected with all the other property managers in in your area. And you kind of learn what the other companies are doing, which company's growing, which company's selling, who's new to the industry, and I think that's really important. It keeps your ear to the ground and it keeps your name in people's minds who are looking for new managers or, looking for new help as they buy and sell buildings.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Is Bulma big in Pittsburgh, Bri?
It is. Yeah. It's, I think, almost every city that I've been in, it has a significant presence. Actually, in Minneapolis, Jacob, there's a waiting list to join BOMA. Like you can't.
And do you know why that is?
Wow.
I can explain to you as a membership committee. So each BOMA chapter needs to have a certain ratio of vendors to managers. So the problem you're having in Minnesota is there aren't enough property managers, and that's why there's no more vendors getting in.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, it takes a long time to get into that organization because nobody's leaving it. And then, so it sounds like they need somebody recruiting property managers so that they can grow their membership, right?
They do. And the Boston region is one of the healthiest ones in the country. As you know, Todd, you never had an issue getting any of your partnerships involved with BOMA.
No.
And we're lucky with that because we do have a huge network of property managers. And the other aspect about BOMA that I didn't mention, Todd, is, and I know you probably participated in a lot of it throughout your career, is the education aspect of it. So not only do you get vendor education and the vendors help teach managers, you also get certifications through management that can help your career. I always like to say property managers aren't experts in anything. We're just really good at listening to all the experts. That's kind of what we do. We listen to you guys. I don't know anything about paving until I met you, Todd, and you really educated me through the years we worked together on what to look for, what's actually happening, what am I looking at when I look at a proposal, why is this person so much cheaper, and so forth.
Sure.
And you only learn that by becoming, building friendships and partnerships through BOMA and really having those one-on-one conversations.
Yeah, that's huge.
What do you find, Jacob, is the biggest challenge that you face with those things that you just mentioned with regard to, kind of getting to know a new industry or, dealing with vendors in an industry? Like, what are the top 3 challenges that you have faced or are facing with regard to, how you interact with vendor partners?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd say first off, as a property manager, don't be afraid to admit you don't know something. We're not experts in roofers, we're not experts in plumbers. You may have an extreme knowledge in some aspect of, a building, but still listen to the experts and really be open-minded. I think was one of my first challenges coming in, is really just being open-minded, listening. I think a lot of people, think they know the best, and everyone wants the same solution. So, it doesn't come from a malicious place. It's just, understand that people have extreme knowledge in some areas and listen. And also, don't be afraid to get second opinions. I always like to get a couple of vendors to look at something because, if the phrase there's always 2 ways to skin a cat. Some vendor might say, oh, there's this way and it costs X amount of dollars. And obviously you might not have that in your budget, so you have to look for other options. So don't be afraid to look for different options. And then I would say, on top of that, you really just have to work with your internal engineers, your own engineers. I rely heavily on my engineers that work in my buildings, especially now with COVID. They're my eyes and ears. They see the bad stuff, and I want them to tell me the bad stuff of the building so we don't get any surprises and we work together on the solution. And you got to remember, they're the ones who work with the vendors. As a property manager, remember that. They're the ones that are going to be there Monday through Friday during this build out, during this pipe repair, during, this installation of a new rooftop unit. So they're going to be there. In terms of vendors, I think the tough part is being able to have a conversation with a vendor and know if they're just selling you or if they're genuinely honest and want to help you. And really hammer that down. If they're pushing on the sales, cut them off and just say, listen, we can talk about stuff down the road, but right now here's my problem and I need your solution.
Sure.
So really understand that. And that's where bringing in multiple people helps. So getting that. Secondly, if I need a proposal, be honest. And this comes to the manager side. Be honest with a vendor. And I've done this to Todd a million times. To say, you know what? Don't kill yourself pricing this. Just give me a ballpark number. I need it by tomorrow. Is this a $10,000 job? Is this a $30,000 job? I don't need, $21,536.49 and 10 pages of why it costs that. I just need a ballpark or something. So as a manager, convey that to your vendor and also let your vendor know that. So I'm not wasting your time to put together, a 10-page proposal. And I'm just like, I just need a ballpark because we're not doing it this year. We're looking at it next year. So I think that's that. And then be honest with your vendor in the timeline. Just sit there and say, listen, like this project might not happen. It's a wish list item for me. Can you just help me out get a number? Or, hey, this is a major repair. It's either going to happen now or we're going to do it the first of the year because I'm going to put it in next year's budget and get it done. So really build that relationship with your vendor because as you guys know, you'll be flexible. You'll work with us. Sure. And a lot of it comes down to the finances of a property, which, you guys will work with. If you need me to pave it in December and pay me in January, we've all kind of done those kind of projects to, finish it up here, but we won't get the funds until the next calendar year or something. So be flexible with that. And that's what I would say for managers to work with your vendors, build that relationship.
Quick follow-up question. What do your best vendors do that's unique?
They always answer the phone call. Even if there's a problem, you can bring it up the ladder and they'll answer the phone call. I think those are the vendors that I've had the best luck with because everyone makes mistakes. Things pop up. We always get surprised, especially in the contracting world. You rip something up, you didn't realize something's behind there. So those have been the best vendors, the people that are open, honest, and you can get a hold of. That even if it's a quick text, hey, can you swing by the property and price out seal coating for me for next year? Thanks. Something quick like that.
Sure.
Those are the best vendors, the ones who communicate and are honest. Yeah,
I think the consistency there of like communication and transparency, right, was like, in both sides of it. It was like, that's what you should do with your vendors, and then the vendors are doing that in return. And that's exactly what we see, man. It's like, when you can get to that point where you build a great relationship, it just makes sense because there's a partnership. Right. There's a true partnership where both sides, have a need for the other side. And, you really enjoy working those relationships that become, true trusted partnerships. Those are where we love spending our time, I was
going to say, even to further it, some of the best vendors we've had major issues, but it's how they handle that issue and, have moved forward from that issue. And they've been the best vendors I've had. Something like we said, something comes up. There's been an issue. I don't want to name any vendors off the top of my head, but, I've had a situation where, I walked into a property and the old manager was kind of in the limbo of a restoration issue. And it was an issue, and the restoration company caused the issue, and it furthered the problem. Tenant wasn't happy. I walked in, I brought it up the chain. They made it right. And since then, we've had a great relationship.
That's good to hear. Yeah, it is all about building that.
I didn't bring up any of Todd's issues. I'm glad you skipped over Todd's issues there.
Most of that was just like personality based, really. It had nothing to do with the workmanship. All good. Well, I hounded him for years to get on the podcast. He wouldn't let me on, so I had to start my own. That was the biggest issue we had. Like, Brian, we're going to show this guy.
Well, we started doing those live shows, and we're getting the big names like Jay Smitty and Sean Carter up there. So.
Big time. Two very, very funny guys. Awesome. All right. So last question I have for you, and I think you're in the middle of it right now. A little inside baseball here, but most vendors I know in the paving space, we talk a lot about helping property managers and facilities managers with their budgets this time of year. Mm-hmm. What does budget season look like for you? How long does it go on for? How truly I don't want to say chaotic, but busy, overwhelming is it?
Yeah, no, every company is a little different. Obviously, I've been with some companies where it doesn't really start until September and it kind of wraps up around November. This company, we kind of started in July, basically the 1st of July, right after Independence Day. We were starting our budget prep. And it's essentially going to go from July until probably early October where they'll be finalized.
Okay.
And this process is a little different that our company's doing this year, which is much better in my opinion. It kind of goes from manager to, my senior manager, and we kind of hash it out for a few revisions. And then it goes up to asset management. Well, they'll do their revisions. And then we'll present it to our ownership or owner partnerships with our final budget that we do. So that's kind of the process right now. And to answer your question, today is the deadline for 2 of my properties first rounds and 2 of my properties second rounds. And in terms of overwhelming, it gets overwhelming when you have to make a change or 2 last minute. And because you have to go run all the reports again. I think that's kind of the overwhelming part of it.
Sure.
But as long as you give yourself enough time, like a few months to prep it, first draft it, second draft it, I think it eases the process and doesn't become so overwhelming, and it helps prevent you from mistakes.
Okay.
And your second question was, how can vendors help us? I would say if vendors started reaching out in the summertime, and I know in the pavement world, that's kind of your prime time, especially in New England. You can't really be doing too many pavement projects in January and February with that frozen ground. But I would say have your sales guys kind of, reach out to the managers while they're doing projects and kind of whisper that in their ear. Because while you're doing crack sealing, you say, hey, do you want a number for seal coating for next year for your budget? I know you probably don't have it this year because you're doing your crack sealing and you may be doing some curb repairs or some painting, whatever you're doing, but kind of help them game plan for the next few years, and you can help them provide that number and just give them ballparks. And like I said, I think the ballparks is huge because we're just going to throw 20 grand in for seal coating. And I ended up getting it done for $14,938.47, whatever it comes to.
Yeah, sure.
But I think that helps managers out a lot while they're preparing their budgets and doing their first rounds. They might not need an exact proposal, and some companies might, and they'll say that. They'll say, I need exact proposal for that. But I think if you help them whispering in their ear in, June, July, and August, while they're starting to prep their budgets, they'll have that information. And you can even just send over a quick email and say, hey, just a quick, looked at your property, seal coating, if you're budgeting purposes, throw 20 in, line striping, throw $2,500 in, if you wanted, we were talking about doing curbs, you want to do concrete, that's $130,000, whatever. If you just threw an email like that of things you discussed, I think that'd go a long way because that manager's just going to flag that email and save it for budget.
Okay. Awesome, man. That's a great tip. We have our foreman trained on our assessment software. And a lot of times when we were out, because we're working with national customers, so we might be going out and doing 20, 30 sites at a time. And we'll have them do that and really look, say, all right, you're already on site doing crack filling and line striping. Take an extra hour and do an assessment for us and get us all the information back. And that's proven to be, again, a little tip for everybody out there. It's proven to be really helpful with us, and our clients really, really love the extra information. So anything we can do to help you maximize your time, right? Is that essentially what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and it also it engraves it in your brain. If you're constantly doing that for each property, that number is going to be in your head. So when you're having a discussion with your asset manager as a property manager, and there's their game planning on what capital to spend or what operating to spend, what improvements you want to do, you can sit there and say, oh well, crack sealing is $8,000 for this property, and the seal coat would be 15. If you want to do it all in 1 year, we could, and you can have that conversation with your asset manager and give them more accurate numbers than if you're just ballparking off the top of your head, not being an expert in paving or HVAC repair or whatever your avenue you're going down.
Yeah, sure.
To give you some detail there, Jacob, basically what we're doing is going out, we'll do a full assessment of the property and literally list every single individual issue. So you'd have curb repairs, you'd have crack sealing, line striping, and we line item all those things. And then, so if you were to send us out and say, hey, can you go handle the crack sealing and line striping on this property? We take that off. So ultimately, you'd have access to that budget information at any point in the year, and it's always changing, that it's always kind of updated. Right. So I would assume that would be super beneficial based on what you just went through, like what you just described, to have access to just, again, and we tell people, when we do these assessments, we're ballparking it because we don't know when they're going to do it.
Of course. And your prices change on material and labor.
we want to provide the facts and data, and then we have GPS coordinated photos that back up all of the recommendations that we've made. And it's to Todd's point, it's been really helpful for property managers because it kind of streamlines what we've been told. One of the most challenging things that you guys have to do is to get all that information together, and then it's always changing and you're going back and forth trying to figure that stuff out.
Well, and if you do it ahead of time, what you won't have happen is a manager email you on the 12th hour or texting you, calling you, hey, can you send me a proposal for, the seal coating? I know we discussed it back in April, but now it's October 31st and my budget's due November 1st. Can you please send me that proposal number? And you're traveling, like you guys said, you're around the country, you're flying at the time, you're not available. So it saves you guys time as well, and it prevents those calls. The only calls you want to get is if there's something wrong in a project.
Right. No, right on. It's funny too, as a vendor, if you're talking to a property manager and they're like, well, I've got $49,615, instead of saying, we're going to spend about 50 grand. Someone was there before you. Somebody came in. It wasn't you. So you got a little more work to do, right?
Exactly.
All good. Awesome, man. Well, this was everything I hoped it could be. This was wonderful. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. Really appreciate you spending the time with us. I wish you nothing but the best at Anchor Health. It sounds like you're really enjoying yourself there.
Yeah, it's a great company. Actually, they're giving us a mental health day next week. So
Wow.
I guess I'll spill the beans on here. It's kind of a surprise to the rest of our coworkers, but me and another coworker are going to meet in the middle. So he's down in Connecticut, and we're going to spend the day golfing.
Oh, that's perfect. Where are you playing?
We're playing 2 courses, Agawam Municipal and Crestview.
Okay.
I've never played them. So we have to do something new. So we're playing new courses.
That's awesome. Oh, really? Really nice. Sounds like a great culture there too.
It is. It's very it's a health company if you think about it, So they care about their employees, and they go above and beyond. So even though we're remote and I'm the me and my engineer are the only 2 employees in Massachusetts, they really make us feel like we're part of the team.
Yeah, and that's a trick to stay connected during kind of times like this where everybody is remote.
Right.
That's impressive. Awesome, man. Brian, anything to you have for Jacob before we let him go here?
No, man, it was very insightful, man. Thank you for everything you shared, and certainly thank you for being on here and spending your morning with us. And wish you nothing but the best, like Todd said, and everything. And hopefully you can get Boston on that website, man. I'd love to see that. I'll keep tracking.
Yeah, absolutely. And Todd, we'll be in touch. I'll get you on the pod when we can get back in person, and we'll have a beer and discuss your podcast.
I'd love to do that. And at that point, maybe we'll be talking about the Celtics' climb to the championship here.
Hey, I got, if you can't see behind me, I got all my Celtics stuff all right there getting ready.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, very nice.
Just haven't put it up yet.
Yep. Yeah, all good. Awesome, man. Well, thank you again. This was great. We appreciate everybody joining us again here for episode 7 of the Pavement Group podcast with our special guest, Jacob Noble. We'll see you on episode 8. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend.